Hello and welcome to the YouTube channel of That Eurovision site and That Eurovision podcast, bringing you all things Eurovision with a slice of life. My name is Isabelle, my pronouns are they, them, and joining me today is Jazzi, who uses she, her pronouns. We're here to debrief about all of the action from the national final shows that took place last week. And starting with the most high profile of the last week's shows, Norway's second semi-final of three took place on Saturday, the 21st of January. And 7 artists performed, 3 qualified to the final. The qualifiers being Yuna with Ecco Inni Mai, Swing It with Prohibition, and Elsie Bay with Love You in a Dream. So, Jazzi, let's get right into it. What did you think of the MGP semi-final 2, of the qualifiers? Did the right acts qualify, in your opinion?
I think all 3 qualifiers in Melodi Grand Prix this week were good. I enjoyed all 3 songs. I absolutely love Jonas Eke Enimai. It reminds me a lot of ways of the clubland style music I used to listen to in 2007, 2008. I'm a little bit chavvy. I think you can probably tell when you watch the videos, and this is absolutely just my kind of music. I also absolutely adore Elsie Bay's Love You in a Dream. I love her voice. I think her voice and the staging and everything around it just built a really nice dark atmosphere, and I really, really enjoyed that. I just thought the song is really haunting and really beautiful, and I've had these 2 songs on like repeat on Spotify since they came out, like last Sunday, not the Sunday just gone, but the last Sunday. Prohibition by Swing It was probably not my personal choice to go through. However, I can totally understand why it did. And the performance was so full of personality. It was fun, it was enjoyable, it was likable. And I've seen our interview with them. They seem like lovely guys. So I'm very happy for them to go through. And I know a lot of people who like that 20s swing style music. So like, this isn't a shock to me this went through. It's just not to my personal taste as much as the other 2 are. As for like my one robbery, I would say Waste by Ella A. I just thought she brought a brilliant high energy performance, which was fun and full of personality. And the song is just simply a little bit more to my taste than Prohibition is. But overall, I am happy with the qualifiers in Melodi Grand Prix in this
I'm
week.
I'm glad you're happy because I'm devastated by this result. Especially given that this is, in my opinion, I know not everybody agrees, but in my opinion, this semi-final of Norway's doing a weird thing where they're calling their heats essentially semi-final, but there are 3 of them, so it's like semi means in half. Anyway, they're calling them semi-finals, so I'm going to call them semi-finals. But this to me is the strongest, or was the strongest, by a long shot, in my opinion. Like, I really don't think much of semi-finals 1 and 3 in terms of the lineup. I only have like a couple of favorites in each, whereas actually in this one there are 4 songs that I think were incredibly strong. I mean, that were, I would have been happy to see any of those 4 qualify, and only one did, and it was Yuna with Ecco Inni Mai, which is that's my runaway favorite from the whole Norwegian selection. So I'm really, really glad it did qualify. I completely agree with you, Jazzy. Like, this is my cup of tea. I'm just such a slut for this kind of folklore spin, like on it's another there's folklore in it. It's kind of got a little bit of what Queen of Kings has going on, in terms of like, it feels really Nordic, it feels folkloric, and then it's just also a banger. Like, it's just kind of, yeah, like a club banger. This one has that even more so, and I think Yuna's just a really interesting presence on the stage as well. Though I hope the staging, I'm sure they'll polish up the staging for you know for the final. Those like tinfoil baking trays, fascinating choice. But I just, yeah, this is my runaway favorite. So I'm just so happy it qualified. And the other two, I'm not surprised Elsie Bay qualified. She's one of the favorites to win. Obviously, people really responded to her strongly last year as well. I just, like many, I feel like this is a much weaker song. I did really like the staging. I completely agree with your comments there that the sort of the atmospheric nature of the dancers were a lovely touch. She looked gorgeous. Like, but the thing is to me that her styling was the most interesting thing about her performance to me. So I'm not surprised that she qualified, but I don't think that she should have, which is a controversial opinion. I'm sure will get me you know, in a lot of people's bad books. But to me, Sandra Lyng's performance of Drøm de Bort was Eurovision ready in a way that actually I don't think any of the others were, and was the strongest performance of the night. It was my early favorite in the whole selection, and now Equinimai just lives in my head. But I'm utterly gutted that Sandra didn't qualify with that, because it's such a beautiful, mournful, melancholy, like really like quite dark and but very emotive ballad, which I just thought she gave everything. I just, yeah, it really like devastated me that she didn't qualify. But you know, they seem to be across the board favoring upbeat pieces this season, I think. We've talked about it before, and therefore I'm really like upset that neither of the Latin pieces qualified, because if you're going to go for upbeat, then I mean Alejandro Fuentes was right there, and I loved Fuego before, but Fuego in performance live was so good. I was so impressed, I was so pleased, and I love to see Latin representation at Eurovision. We don't get it much, and we don't get it much in the national finals either. And you know, I just, that was my third pick to qualify, and I think that we really are missing out by not having this like slowed down sort of like sexy reggaeton adjacent Latin piece in the final. I think that's a real flub from Norway. That would have been so cool to have. You know, Ella's performance of Waste felt a little bit underconfident to me, actually. I really have been enjoying it, the studio cut, but I think that her vocals and her stage presence just aren't quite there. Like, to me, and I could be wrong, but to me, she just doesn't feel, I mean, it's the comparison to Chanel is always going to be there, because it really was kind of drawing a lot from, you know, from I think the fact that slow mo was so popular last year, and it just didn't stand up to it in terms, I think in terms of experience, they're just miles apart. So I'd like to see her back, because oh my god, a trilingual banger, what a boon, what a gem. But it just didn't quite live up to my expectations live, but I wouldn't have minded to see it qualify, so I'm upset it didn't in that sense. And I am surprised that Swing It qualified actually with Prohibition, because yeah, that's not my cup of tea. You know, I infamously can't really stand almost all swing. Like, it has to be really something special for me to enjoy it. Like, there's something about swing that just doesn't get me. But you know, I love a lot of other jazz genres, but not swing. I feel like this particular track is so on the nose lyrically. It feels a bit cringy. But the thing that surprises me about it qualifying is that the lead vocals were so off. Like, I actually was uncomfortable watching it, because it felt so off. Which, you know, it happens. It happens. Vocals are sometimes off, but I really thought that killed its chances, and then it went unqualified. So I don't know what's going on in Norway. Moving on, though, I promise I have nicer things to say about other acts. We also had the first heat of Pabandom Naujo last Saturday, and it's the first of just 2 heats this year. 15 artists competed for 10 places in the semi-finals. I don't think I will reel off all the qualifiers, because I think we might be here all night if I did. But did you have any thoughts about the Heat 1 qualifiers? Were there any that surprised you? Were you surprised by any of the non-qualifiers?
So I was trying to watch Pabandom and Melodi Grand Prix at the same time. And honestly, it was really difficult to keep track of both, but I somehow did manage it. Um, I would say my personal favorite of the evening was Rutama with the song Solo. She won the semi, and this felt very 80s in style, and also also in just like in the way it was sung with like that deep voice. Like it just all felt very 80s, and it actually reminded me of like songs that I would listen to in the car when I was young and that my parents would put on the radio. And so this felt very nostalgic to me, and I just really enjoyed it. I also enjoyed Yusta with the song Need More Fun. It was just a fun, playful song that I enjoyed, and it was at the end of the show, and it was a great little closer. Um, Noise Destiny's Child. I've seen it's received a bit of hate on Twitter and in the fandom. It was a little bit of a guilty pleasure for me. I think there's a lot of ballads in Pavandom, and I think it just came at the right moment for me. Maybe if this like maybe I'll rewatch it in the semi and just think, oh, this is actually awful. And I can also see why the voters in Lithuania enjoyed it. Lithuania like to they like to vote for things that have a little bit of a jokey vibe to them. I think for my robbery, I would say WI with You Can't Not. I just found this really nice and enjoyable to listen to, and I also really loved her voice. It was a bit noughties, girly pop, but I like that type of music anyway, so this would always appeal to me. And it deserved to make it to the semis, but obviously it did not.
I'm kind of glad that you brought up some of the numbers that you brought up actually. That's so interesting because there's about 10 years between us. I'm about 10 years older than Jazzy, for anybody listening or watching. But I totally get that in the car, 80s, like kind of nostalgic sort of synth pop type. There's something really atmospheric about that kind of music, and it's really nostalgic to me too. It's car music. It's like car journey at night, maybe you're coming home from somewhere, you're a little sleepy and cozy, and yeah, it was interesting to see that win the heat. I'm not mad about that at all. I wasn't one of my favorites. My standouts were Gabrielius Vagelis's Sjauksmas, and he placed second, which was also fascinating to see because it's quite a different vibe, I thought, to a lot of the other stuff that was there in the lineup. And I also loved Justa Krojalite, who snagged fourth place with Need More Fun. I loved Justa's entry last year, How to Get My Life Back, which made it all the way to the final, ended up sixth out of the final field of 8. And Need More Fun is quite different. It's more playful and quirky, but I think the thing that ties them both together is that both of her entries were like just radio ready, I think, from the jump. And I just really loved that bold and simple staging, but like just really memorable staging. I found hers the most memorable number of the night, to me by a long shot. But it was interesting. I found it's funny that you mentioned that you felt like there were a lot of ballads. Like I think that there are usually more ballads, or at least there were last year. I covered it last year, and I remember finding it a little tough to get through because, I mean, overall, I think the quality of this heat was really strong compared to some of the heats last year. And maybe the fact that there are only 2 heats, not the 3 of last year, maybe that's kind of, also, part of it is just slightly more streamlined. I think that we're seeing a lot of retro feeling stuff, aren't we? Particularly in the upbeat numbers, we're seeing a lot of that disco revival I keep talking about. It's really in evidence. And I think that helped Gabrielius's song to stand out as a moodier ballad. But Sjauksmas means a cry or a shout, right? So I would like to see that intensity maybe build a bit more and kind of get a bit more, I don't know. Taking it to the semi, I'd like to see that ramped up a little bit. Whereas I think Justad just I just want her to keep doing what she's doing. She's my winner at the moment. I have to agree with sort of, well, no, and no one deserves hate. No artist deserves hate. I am stunned that Destiny's Child made it through, that Neu made it through. I just thought that was I'll leave it there. I'm surprised it made it through, and I think that particularly I'm particularly surprised it made it through because of the 5 that didn't make it through. I think really, unfortunately, Justa Rubejute's I think her performance just wasn't great of When I'll Find, but the other 4 were great, I thought, and better than some of the stuff that did qualify. So I was particularly gutted for Eiste not making it through with We're Not Running, Eiste Pilvelite. I guess she probably suffered from being on first, being kind of a down tempo ballad, bit more of a serious number, because there was so much that was fun and quirky. Maybe calling London great is a bit of a stretch. Multic's London. I mean, it's interesting seeing like I keep thinking that this kind of retro upbeat club feel that we're getting from quite a lot of the numbers across this season, across a lot of the national finals. I wonder if that's to do with the fact that we've got a Eurovision in Liverpool. Like, it could be a total coincidence, but there's a lot that feels nostalgic in quite a specifically British club way. And yeah, I just find that quite intriguing. So moving on, Friday the 20th of January saw Malta hold its second quarter final. And the reason I'm listing this last is because this isn't actually a qualifying round, right? So they're doing a bit of an odd thing. They're calling them quarterfinals, but really they seem to be more of an opportunity for the songs to be introduced, the artists to be introduced to the audience, and for the songs to be shown stripped bare of any staging or effects. So we saw 13 artists present their songs on Friday, and yeah, any thoughts on the second round of MESC quarterfinal songs, Jazzi?
So I'm not gonna lie, I have really struggled with this national final and this heat. There were some positives I found, so I will list them first. I really like Busker with the song Dance Our Own Party. It did stand out from the others musically, and the reason for that is it felt authentic to the artist, which is one of my many issues with MESC over the years. A lot of the songs in this national final feel quite paint by numbers. Which in turn, I just think nowadays it's just too safe for Eurovision, and it's why Malta are not getting the results that they probably think they should be getting, but it's just too safe and a little bit dull, I'm sorry to say. Oathman Brooks' song Checkmate, enjoyable, and she has an amazing voice, and she does seem to have that dynamism when she performs on stage, which I also found a lot of the acts did not have. Some of the performances just felt very audition, like X Factor, Britain's Got Talent auditiony to me. That is just my opinion, and maybe the other heats are better. I'm not sure about that though. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of this national final this year.
I'm
sorry to say.
Agree with a lot of what you just said. I hate the audition feel of these quarterfinal shows. I understand that, especially for a lot of the smaller countries in Eurovision, they kind of, this is just, it's, I mean, why not broadcast, your audition process or whatever? Like, it gives you content, you get the advertising bucks, like it's kind of like you've got guaranteed eyes on you from kind of the the local audience. So I understand why it makes sense from a commercial point of view or from a content point of view to broadcast as much as you can of the process, but I think that it's counterproductive. Like, it's fine if the juries want to see the artist presenting pared back, auditions, essentially. You know, if the juries want to see that to ascertain whether or not the artists themselves are, you know, good vocalists, strong enough vocalists, fine. I don't think this should be televised. I don't think this part of the process should be televised, because I think it's a real hype killer, you know. And at this point, MESC has a, you know, a reputation for being too long and, you know, not the greatest in terms of quality, not the most interesting in terms of diversity or variety. And you end up in a place where people don't want to watch your national final. And maybe this isn't a problem. Maybe actually, from their point, the, you know, the broadcaster's point of view over in Malta, they don't care whether the international audience wants to watch the national final. Fair enough. Like, maybe actually it's pulling all the views back home and that's all it needs to do. And this is just us talking from that outside perspective.
So I met Chiara, who represented Malta a few times back in the 90s and in 2009. And she said that in Malta, Eurovision is taken really seriously and it is a huge deal over there. So it's very, like, I imagine the Maltese audience do want to watch this national final.
Yeah,
So
I agree. But I wonder how productive it is to broadcast an audition process, essentially, which is what this, to basically, because what you're doing is you're showing a less good version, a much less polished version, a less dynamic and engaging version of a song when you do this, right? So, and exactly what you said, it's Britain's Got Talent, it's X Factor, it's that format, and maybe that's fine if that's what the audience is expecting. And I know that like X Factor type shows are literally used to choose, you know, to select Eurovision artists for in quite a lot of countries, so it's not like this is outrageous or anything. Like, I understand it is part of the, I just personally don't resonate with that format. Like, there's a reason that I don't watch X Factor. It's because it always feels really painful to get through, especially those audition processes. And even something like The Voice, I think as a format is better, is better, but anyway, that's a whole debate really about like that national final format, whether or not it even works. But I just, you know, I agree that it's a bit of a struggle to get through. I will say that I thought this second quarterfinal had higher production values and better song quality than the first. The first one was a shocker. I mean, there were like a couple of standouts, and everything else I was like, this feels like a first round X Factor audition. And that's not what you want. Like, you're not doing the artists any favors that way. And you're sort of undermining, I think, the whole process if you do it that way, because these aren't first round auditions. That's not what they are, but they're coming across as that to the audience, or to us anyway. Maxine Pache, I think, was the most interesting to me with Alone. By far. I really thought that was oh yeah, that's something I would listen to. I agree that Brooke has a really great performance energy and great stage presence. I think that just a lot of these pieces will be better once they've got the whole production behind them. So a lot of the songs, almost all of the songs in this quarterfinal, actually I'd be like fine to see, you know, in a final eventually. You know, we've got a few more rounds to get through before we get there, but because I think a lot of them will just look better in a you know, with the full staging and all of that. I appreciate the busker and Matt Black for bringing something a little different because quite frankly, the power vocals and ballads, they do sort of all blend together. So, and I agree, it's a bit Eurovision by numbers. There's nothing really standing out to me, and I think that we're looking at a situation where Malta, you know, if they keep doing this kind of thing and prioritizing this kind of thing, they will struggle to qualify again. So, but I'm heartened to see that. I wonder if they took, you know, some of the feedback on board, because it did feel more produced this time round than the previous week.
it may not even all matter in the end, because they may send an artist, they may like choose a winning song, but they may not send it to Eurovision.
I mean, that's only happened twice, but I know that, you know, people like have really like that's stuck in our minds. And of course that's true. But that, I mean, to be fair, that's true of a lot of these, you know, a lot of these national finals. Like, they can end up just being artist selections. And I mean, honestly, last year's national final winner for Malta, I thought was atrocious. So I thought it was a great decision that they made to replace that song, because I actually quite liked the song that they ended up sending. Didn't matter in the end because it didn't qualify, because it was still a bit generic. All of that said, that takes us to the end of this week's national final roundup. If you enjoyed this video, do please give it a like. Subscribe to our YouTube channel for artist interviews. Got loads of those at the moment from these national final selections, and lively discussions about all things Eurovision. Keep up with our latest podcast episodes by following @that Euro podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And be sure to follow @that Euro site on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok for Eurovision-related news, features, and more. And thank you, Jazzi, for being here with me and debriefing about all of that business, everything we saw last week. And stay tuned for more of the same. Goodbye. Bye.